I will offer my own reflections from two perspectives. One I call it geography, demography and spiritual heritage, and the other I call democracy, its institutions and contemporary developments. One good advantage, Mr. President, in giving the valedictory address is whatever is important has been discussed. Whatever needs to be said have been said, so I can offer that overview and give my own personal point of view. What is happening really is that an appreciation of geography is very important in that region. We are talking about a region which is a colorful corridor between two great civilizations of India and China, and also an instrument that took the spirit of Indian civilization to Southeast Asia. Of course, there were other routes ranging from Kalinga to Afghanistan and beyond, but the main route were two, ocean and this Northeast India. The Himalayas, the river Brahmaputra, and the forests constitute great landmarks that have a powerful bearing on the people and their behavior. The Himalayas constitute, as must have been discussed, the highest mountain range in the world, and in India it goes to different states, but it joins the northeastern states closely, particularly Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Bhutan, and Tibet. And it was therefore the highest mountain range in the world was called by Kalidas the measuring rod of the earth. In recent decades, you must have again noticed that the Himalayas and the Tibetan plateau have witnessed massive deforestation, extensive constructions and habitations. This in turn have made deep impact on the ecology and climate of the area. Climate change has accelerated the melting of Tibet's glaciers. Some of the major rivers in Asia have their headwaters on the Tibetan plateau, particularly the Brahmaputra, the Indus, the Satluj, the Arun, and the Karnali. Climate change effects will resonate far beyond India, Tibetan plateau, and China, as the availability of water for billions of people in South and Southeast Asia will be adversely affected. Let me now move on to demography, give you a broad picture. The total population of the Northeast India was estimated at 1 million in 1826. It rose to 26 million according to census of 1921. It rose further, and according to 2011 census, it stood at over 45 million. So in this span of less than 200 years, 1 million has become 45 more and has been rising since then. The growth of population is largely on account of migration of population from outside. This demographic explosion is an important phenomenon, and that could be a topic for a separate seminar. The foremost feature of social order of Northeast India is its heterogeneity. The region is inhabited by three major groups: the hill tribes, the plains tribes, and the non-tribal population of the plains. With each group, there is tremendous variety. In terms of race, probably greater variety than in any other part of the globe. Language, as many as 420 languages and dialects, and religion, animism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Sikhism, and Christianity. The people of Northeast India are composed primarily of 5 races that entered the region at different periods of history: the Austerics, the Negroids, the Kiratas, the Dravidians, and the Aryans. Now, I don't want to go into the details who came from where, but I must say that each brought with him, or each tribe brought with itself, its own spiritual heritage, its own value systems, ranging from rituals in deaths and marriages to ways of living, to ways of farming, to ways of thinking and prayers. Up to the 12th century, animism and the Ramayana Mahabharata tradition, based upon India's ancient Hindu epics, dominated most of the region's consciousness. Buddhism was introduced in the 7th century, Islam in the 13th, and Christianity in the 19th. The legends, myths, folklores, and customs of the area were woven with those of the rest of India and originated from the same sources, what I call the Ramayana Mahabharata tradition. Both the Ramayana and Mahabharata make distinct references to Pragjyotis and Kamrup, the ancient and medieval names of Assam. The advent of the home rule over Upper Assam in 1228, that lasted for another 600 years, was gradually marked with a greater interaction between the homes and the Indianized Hindu population. One specific feature of the monarchy was that the homes came single and they married the local girls. The Ramayana Mahabharata tradition had unprecedented mass appeal in the Brahmaputra Valley and to a lesser extent in the neighboring hills, with the Neo-Vaishnavite movement of reformation led by Shankardev and in the 15th and 16th centuries. Satras, where prayers were held and religious discourses given, were established, and that accommodated in Namghars and Kirtanghars people of not only the caste Hindus but also of the plains tribals and the Muslims. Krishna became the key figure in social life, and that particularly was embraced by the Meiteis of Manipur. The highly secular and receptive character of the Austric and Mongolian tribes, the Suti tradition, under which the stories were transmitted from one generation to another without the help of written words, and the development of an Aryan dialect which was to swear by the rulers as well they ruled, and later became the Assamese language. Buddhism, as I said, didn't come directly from Bihar, as did Brahmanism or Ramayana Mahabharata tradition, but from Tibet into Arunachal Pradesh and from Burma into Mizoram, from which it spread to other parts of northeast India. Buddhists in India generally follow the tenets of Theravada Buddhism, but the Buddhists of northeast India are mostly Mahayanists who believe that Buddhahood is open to all. The impact of Islam began with the unsuccessful efforts of the Turco-Afghan ruler of Bengal, Bakhtiyar Khilji, to capture Assam in 1205-06. By 1682, Assam had become the religion of a significant group of people in Assam, Manipur, Tripura, and East Bengal, now Bangladesh. A process of assimilation began between Hindus and Muslims in the Brahmaputra Valley, and by the 17th century, Muslims had become an indivisible part of the local population. The work of Christian missionaries that began in the 1840s with the publication of Arnodaya, a Baptist monthly in Assamese, the translation of the Bible into Assamese, went over to the hills, and it spread the idea of healthcare, founding of schools, colleges for both boys and girls. The conversion of animists to Christianity occurred on a phenomenal scale And it is a result of that that the Christians today are 80% of Meghalaya's tribal population, 85% of Nagaland's, 96% of Mizoram's, and 26% of Manipur's. The introduction of Christianity was a new civilizational process that led to the growth of literacy and better health care. Another phenomenon that happened was on the economic side. 16 lakh. By 1928, over 16 lakh hectares of land were allotted to the planters. And I always salute my Assamese ancestors. They refused to become labor on the plantation. They said no. So the labor had to come from outside. And they came in large number. That trade attracted the Marwaris from Rajasthan and other small traders from neighboring states of Bihar, Nepal, and others. The Chota Nagpur supplied and Odisha supplied the maximum bulk of labor to be working on the plantation. But in all this phenomenon, the spiritual heritage was secular and pluralistic in character. This is something unique. And that was so strong that you will see at various phases love of the Hindus for the Muslims and conflict between Hindus and Hindus over language. Land is a factor, but politics has added another factor, that is political power. I always tell people that politics sometimes you feel has become more powerful than culture, but it is not so. And it is culture that unites, and the culture of Assam or the culture of Manipur may look different to some people, but it is the same. I always compare it with bee and ant activity. In the ant activity, the ant collects the particles of sugar and deposits it at one place. The bee moves from one flower to the other, collects the nectar and deposits it at another place. Both lead to honey. But it is the bee activity where you can't distinguish. In the ant activity, you can distinguish the source. And it is in this connection that I say that although the honey on the bank of Brahmaputra would taste differently from the bank of Loktak Lake or in the Maflong sacred villages, but it is that Indian culture. And that similarity, you can see it with the honey of on the bank of Jamuna or Ganga. So this is something which is a very permanent and tangible source of our strength in that region. Then my second kind of reflection is on democracy, its institutions, and contemporary developments. You know, the democracy was unknown because the freedom struggle remained in the plains. It didn't permeate into remote hill areas. And so when democratic institutions came, and in this political equality, one person, one vote, equal vote, equal powers, that was not known. Value of vote, one person, one vote, one value. And that, I must say, see, look at the power of over-democracy. In 1952, first elections, people of Nagaland largely, over 98% boycotted, or 96% boycotted the elections. Today, Nagaland is one of the states where the percentage of people going to the polling stations is the highest. Same with Mizoram, same with Manipur. So why I am saying this is that democracy has been accepted in the Northeast in a big way. And because of its spiritual heritage, there was no untouchability, there was no dowry. So all those barriers that Bihar has or UP has are unknown there. So the acceptance of democracy, somebody asked me, why people vote there? Because these are the barriers. But new barriers are being erected in the Northeast also, I am aware of that. But at the same time, the framers of the Constitution knew how to go and create the process of development. And there they found that the tribal societies had to be list administered, and they went for a committee headed by Sri Gopinath Bardaloy, with Reverend Nichols Roy and Roopnath Brahmo as the other two members, and two members from outside the region. And they went for a separate set of institutions called district councils to protect tribal rights on land, to protect their customs and belief systems. And this was put into operation, but very soon it was found that it is inadequate. And there was clamor for new estates, because as democracy was getting deeper, the power of the state system was getting familiar, and I had the advantage of seeing both the systems. And it was, I remember, I was very unhappy when I was asked to work for implementation of a sub-state of Meghalaya. I know it is doomed to failure, but that was the, and it failed. I was very happy that it failed. And ultimately, now you have 7 states were created, Manipur, Tripura, and the rest all from Assam. And this was very, very important. And at that stage, I wrote in file, I again wrote in the Home Ministry's files, I spoke also, I am speaking again today. There should be no temptation to reorganize the region again, at least for 100 years. Because it is an easy task to entertain petitions for new estates. It is a difficult task to make it work. And therefore, I hope this conference also accepts this idea. And with the reorganization of the state came the Northeastern Council. And I was there. I wrote for some other connection, Mr. Chairman, and I spoke on this on the Northeastern Council itself. I'm virtually reading it from there. My memory takes me back to the days when I watched the council being established at Shillong as a civil servant working in Assam. While inaugurating the Northeastern Council on 7th November 1972, the then Prime Minister of India, Srimati Indira Gandhi, said, and I quote, "The primary purpose of this council is the development of the region for greater human welfare. I am glad to inaugurate this council, which is promising innovation in regional planning, may it fulfill the hope we have invested in it." 36 years later, I became a member of the Northeastern Council in my capacity as Governor of Assam. In its meeting, I said, and I quote, "The joining of Sikkim as a member of Northeastern Council was an important event, as I call it. The 7 sisters got a little brother, Haru Bhai, as if to complete the family. The NEC is an important forum, as it is from here that each one of us, representing the states of the region, get an opportunity to voice our concerns and formulate policies and strategies to bring about balanced development of the region. I recall Mr. Srivastava being there at that time when I addressed this council. Now, the council was housed in Shillong. Then the capital shifted down of Assam, and power makers in Home Ministry were sitting here. It didn't work well. They got with an idea of donor, which has been mentioned by here, and the donor is functioning. Fortunately, it had some ministers from the northeastern India. What it has got, I don't know if it has been discussed, was the non-lapsable pool of funds. Every ministry was asked to have 10% expenditure. And if it is not spent, then it does not, normally if you don't spend the budgeted money, it lapses. But it doesn't lapse. It goes to the non-lapsable fund. I got this non-lapsable pool of resources activated because I wanted to create a new city when airport was inaugurated in near Guwahati. And it was, new city requires a lot of money. I said, no, we will get it from there. So I told the minister, he was from Tinsukia. Do you remember him? Ghatwa. He was the minister, Pavan Singh Ghatwa. So I phoned him, I knew him very well. So he said, what do you want me to do? I said that you promise me to give 10,000 crores for the city. And he said, where is the money? I said, you have the non-lapsable fund. So I said, give me at least 1,000 crores. How do I go to the World Bank? He immediately sent me a letter of 1,000 crores.
Check.
No, not check, letter. I wanted a letter. Then I told the Chief Minister of Assam, Mr. Gogoi, Mr. Tarun Gogoi, I said, you seek 10,000 crores for beautification of Brahmaputra. Have a plan. If Northeast has to develop, Guwahati has to develop. He said, I said, you seek, develop, make a plan, have your local planners, keep them for 10 years. There is nothing much to be seen in Guwahati in terms of grandeur, except of forests, Brahmaputra river and all that, and Kamakhya temple. Create that grandeur. Opportunity comes to a generation only once. I do not know what happened. I think nothing has happened. Then I was very happy the other day to hear the annual budget. And Prime Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, I don't know if you have discussed this, she talked about social welfare objectives relating to inclusive growth and financial inclusion. And she said, we will have to go for stock exchange for social sector. I thought it was a good policy because it can create a vibrant social enterprise ecosystem. And I was reminded of my days to which you, Mr. President, referred to in the World Bank when we went for Development Gateway Foundation. And of course, the World Bank gave money subsequently, and it is still working. What I found that this is a nascent idea, and startups can take up. And you have a very nice institution there called Indian Institute of Technology in Guwahati, which again came up during my days, thanks to Chief Minister Singh, his initiative in Guwahati. Now, this, I don't know what shape it will take, or whether anybody will take notice of it to work on it. But one thing is very clear: there should be a scrutiny of existing NGOs in Northeast. I found in this Development Gateway Foundation, there was repetition. The World Bank was funding different regions on the same project. Same thing is happening in Northeast. They are repeating and doing nothing. I don't know, we have 10,000 NGOs there or more? More? At least 9,000 have to go if an audit is done. Somebody talked about the audit of donor and Northeastern Council. This audit also should be added to that list. Now I think I have given you this. Now let me give some concluding remarks. I have 15 minutes, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, surely.
Or 10 minutes I can finish. I have some quarrel with one public attitude. There are two special features of development experience. First, there is a widely shared view in the region, and which is true, that no important development project is initiated without clamor from the local people. This is true, and this is true of other regions also. This phenomenon has created a psychological impact to the extent that a strong feeling exists that the central administration is not sympathetic to local demands. Neither the state government nor the central government have taken any meaningful measure to remove this widespread misunderstanding. Secondly, the words development, industrialization, and urbanization are considered in several quarters in the region as instruments to favor the outside population. This impression has persisted ever since the tea plantation industry led to an influx of outsiders in Assam, and this is continuing. Now, this phenomenon is acting as a countervailing force in the way of efforts of modernizers and the government machinery to break the culture of poverty in the region. Now, the way out would be for the local elite, including economic elite, to take a view how to marry the two. The general feeling among the people of Northeast India is that there has been inadequate economic development of the region. People of the region blame the government of India for this present situation in the region. This is particularly true as in a federal setup with the states and the center has to act jointly, particularly in areas of education, health, agriculture, skill and development and employment. The responsibility has to be shared between the state, between the center, the state and the local organizations, district administration and all that. Now, by blaming one, you withdraw. You don't use your maximum energy. So this is something which has to be activated. That yes, we will blame, but and that doesn't mean that we will not do. And this seminar, 2-day seminar, is particularly significant because you are talking about education, healthcare, agriculture, and other areas where the responsibility after the division of financial kitty and GST is more on the state than with the center. So something has to be done. The chief ministers have to be made accountable. Now you have to make them accountable. It has to be made clear. Now let me conclude. But before I do, I must tell you that this area which I didn't mention, did I? I didn't. Was about lookist policy and actist policy. Now this is something which I found very significant. I didn't know that till I looked at the statistics. In the aftermath of economic liberalization, the government of India went for Lookist policy in 1992. And this was building up extensive economic and strategic relations with the nations of Southeast Asia. One great advantage that we have with Southeast Asia is that Brahmanism and Buddhism were the forces which integrated India with Southeast Asian countries. And that's what one scholar said, that when he looks at the history of the world, India is the only country which has used their spirit to conquer the hearts of people in Southeast Asia and not the sword. Now this actist policy, which was rechristened by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi in 2014, is going for concrete measures. Now, this has security implications, this has economic implications, but at the same time, this casts a responsibility on the elite of Northeast India to play a role, to take up a role. And for that, there should be intensive dialogue among the scholars and the university heads as to what direction we should go. And this is very important, and this conference is a big step. The other thing which I wanted to mention, and I must mention because I want to give my views, is about migration and citizenship issues. The NRC preliminary work is over, but appeals have to be filed. Now, one thing I have found, and I'm frank with you, the economy of the plains, in Brahmaputra Valley in particular, these migrant Muslim labor play a big role. And they have taken, as I said in my book, a subordinate position in terms of economic management vis-a-vis the caste Hindus. Now, if 2 lakhs are taken out suddenly, this will harm our economy. And if Hindus start migrating instead, this will disturb the social cohesion in Assam. It is not a secret that if SB's caste Hindus or have to prefer between Muslims from outside, particularly East Bengal, and Hindus from East Bengal, they will prefer the Muslims. Because they accept your culture. They try to get absorbed. And here they are playing a big role in the economy, so I suggested to the government, if they are willing to take work permit, grant them. And for God's sake, don't give preference to any community on religious lines. Just forget about that. Delete it from the Citizenship Bill of 2016, which is written there. Just drop it. It is the sovereign right of the government of India to grant citizenship to anybody it finds suitable. What is his religion, what is his profession, is for you to decide. But religion can't be the criterion. That will hit us very, very hard, and it will have repercussions elsewhere. Now, last few words. We need a bold vision. Education that brings opportunity and equity, build institutions of excellence like IIT Guwahati, St. Mary's Convent, Shillong, and you have other institutions of excellence. Mr. President, that convent was the first institution in Asia which Cambridge University accepted in 30s, where you can get a graduation from Cambridge. So we had that kind of tradition of excellence of the institution. That is on the decline. Similarly, skill development organizations have to come up. Healthcare that improves nutrition. Child mortality is lowered, fertility rate is lowered, and it facilitates people to live longer. Towards all these three actions, there is imperative requirement to urgently undertake social mapping of the region that would reveal what is picturesquely called areas of darkness in respect of education, healthcare, and employment. I know in Assam and Meghalaya which are the areas of darkness, and these have historical reasons, but one has to go. I just give you one example about healthcare. Barpeta was a subdivision when I was Deputy Commissioner, and Barpeta was represented by the then President of India earlier as Minister, Sri Fakhruddin Ali Ahmed. He called the Chief Minister and he said, go for family planning in Barpeta. This will be 74. So he gave me the task. So I said, I will try, but I need an officer. So there was one Dr. Ahmed who had worked with me when I was Deputy Commissioner at Tejpur. I said, if he comes, he has a flair to enter into the houses. So he came and attached to Barpeta Hospital. Assam has a good quality in administration. The hospitals are district hospitals. Like Congress committees was district Congress committee. Jila Parishad in north, in northern eastern states or northern states, it was known as Mahkuma Parishad. Again, subdivision, independent subdivision, districts had no distinction. So he went and he said it is possible. So we got it cleaned up. I called the army gentleman. So he said no. They help people in Nagaland. I knew that. So he said no, we will do it. And 18 tents were set up, one for us and the rest for the patients, doctors, maids. So first day 6, they were operated upon, Tubetukomi. Second day about 22. Third day 600 women. Doctors fled away. We took doctors from Guwahati Medical College. They hardly worked and went for about 40-45 operations, but then the operation theatres were expanded under military doctors' care. But they also disappeared. So there was a demand that Dibrugarh Medical College doctors would come. Then we knew that this will lead to a crisis and the whole scheme disappeared. I am not so much concerned about this insurgency. I have seen it, handled it. Don't try to give something which will lead to insurgency and conflict. This had political reasons. If you take away political power from the dominant class, in any state, anywhere, you will have your own variety of protest. It can be insurgency, it can be even anything. I am not concerned with, and I believe as society faces change, problems and conflicts will continue to arise. Despite several challenges, the ideals of democracy are widely accepted and have been sustained through difficult periods. The vigor of its practice and the growing faith of people all over India in democratic processes of governance is an encouraging sign. A new society should emerge from the intensive conflicts and accelerated transformations taking place, and I believe it is taking place in Northeast India. I used to quote Kesab Mahanta in good old days, an Assamese poet. He called it the problems of change because I had to give a title for my book, Northeast India. I must tell you that after Nehru Fellowship, I wrote this book on Assam, the Northeast India, so it's a question of title. And so the problem of change was accepted by OUP. But I thought that will be too vague. I wanted. So this was, then it has to be Assam. I said, no, call it the Northeast India. And the only supporting document was the law, the Reorganization of Northeast India Act. I said, no, I want to call it. So I feel very happy today, Mr. President, when I ask a smart boy or girl, where are you from? He says, from Northeast. And he doesn't say, when I probe further, then I know she is an Ao from Nagaland or Meitei from Manipur or things of that nature. So this is a matter of great. And then I had written, again, I have forgotten the Assamese version. In English it means, why are you startled at the growling of the pitcher, lying on the dry ground? Listen, be all ears if you can. It is the wind humming, the new wind humming over there. I am one of those who don't entertain pessimistic ideas about Northeast India. In fact, I dream that in our lifetime, at least in your lifetime, Northeast would become a developed part of the country, comparable to southern and western regions of India. For I see among the common people faith in democracy and promise over the faces of young boys and girls of the region to learn and to excel. This gives me hope. Thank you.